Two top 100 ASX giants just dropped game-changing news. And could it be the spark that kicks off their next major bull run? If you already own them, should you double down? If you don't, is now the moment to finally jump in before the next leg higher? Plus, one top 200 ASX stock just posted a slower Q3 quarterly performance update. But don't write it off just yet, because hidden in the price action is something we think most investors are missing, a rare setup that could deliver huge upside moving forward. Welcome to Wealth Within's Hot Stock Tips. With over 2 decades of experience training over 30,000 traders, we bring you what actually works in the stock market. Joining me today is Wealth Within analyst Pedro Banales, and I'm senior analyst Philip Tortevsky. So let's dive straight in. Good afternoon, Pedro. Welcome from overseas. Obviously, you are corresponding out of the country right now, which is still nice to see you wearing your suit. And we're going to be covering off some great stocks.
That's it. Looking forward to it. Excited.
Fantastic. All right. So first up, as mentioned today, is Telstra. Now, I want to bring up an announcement that we saw with Telstra today, announcing that a new CEO of the Telstra InfraCo business has been announced. Now, this CEO, if we zoom on down, is the currently Microsoft's managing director for Australia and New Zealand, Mr. Worrell. So he'll commence Stephen Worrell, actually, who will commence on September 2025. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, Pedro, because, changing in structure there, obviously, for Telstra, announcing a former Microsoft managing director. Now, given this part of the business is in line with the, infrastructure and all that goes on, I mean, we've often seen big announcements, big changes in the structure there can lead to a really strong surge in the share price, because a lot of the time, a lot of the confidence with these companies comes in from behind the people driving them. And although we've seen Telstra rise over the last couple of months, there still is now that huge bargain type opportunity for the stock if this is another leg to spur it on to some huge upside. So I want to go to the chart and get your thoughts here, mate, on what you're seeing with Telstra.
Yeah, mate. So, I mean, this could bode well for the stock. It's already been on a massive uptrend, since early 2020, actually. We are headed to we're currently at a very strong resistance level of $4.60. Now, that's basically half of the all-time high that we saw in 1999. So it's a very strong level that we're seeing at. The stock has changed trend 3 times. So the momentum has changed. Now it's quite vertical. So I am expecting a little bit of a pullback, maybe back to this accelerated trend. But eventually, if we do break above that $4.60, I think that this stock is going to test that previous high of around that $6.70. So let's have a look at the track record of this wall. I'm not sure exactly, if he's been successful in the past, but the chart is actually showing some very good news for Telstra.
Yeah, and I want to stay on the chart, actually bring up my charts on the screen and have a look, because I've got some very similar lines there for you. To me, another important level, and I totally agree with what you're saying, is around that $5 mark, because clearly, obviously, Telstra, this was one stock that has been unloved since, after 1997, had that initial euphoria on the IPO, which we do see with companies. Then they fall away, but at some point they get going again. Telstra never did. It fell down in 2010. But to me, from a technical perspective, this is a technical analysis or a technical trader's dream type setup when you're talking big picture. And what I mean by that is the nature of this low in 2011, and then a second and a third bout in 2018 and 2020. Most traders that do trade technically would understand over this kind of time span how important those unfoldings are. And it's because of that, I think this stock is now potentially turning the corner, which we've seen a higher base at around $4. This beautiful, strong breakout, which I agree with you, is a little bit stretched. But I see the Telstra getting up to $5 before getting any meaningful resistance, which we saw around, back in 2008 and also 2005. So, I mean, on the weekly chart, just to add to that, you've got beautiful momentum line following it up. Yes, it is a little stretched over the last couple of months. if it can pull back to this area where I've got in rectangle and the line around 420, which is, yeah, there you go, interesting number, 420. Falling back to that level, you can clearly see what was resistance in the past could act as support, but it's very evident that around this level there was a huge amount of price congestion. So for the safer, I guess, medium-term entry, it would be nice to see Telstra slow down and get back in line with what is sustainable rise in terms of trend, or see some seller activity. And for the more longer term a player, I would argue that also. But while it's trending like this, those short-term scalpers, I mean, they'd be having a field day right now. And I think there's more upside before we get to that $5. The only other point I want to make on Telstra, and I'll get your thoughts as well, is this volume. Big volume coming in again. We're starting to track the volume that we saw literally back around these levels in March 2020. So, and again, also 2018. So at the onset of some big moves, we're getting bigger volume come in on big rises. I like that.
Yeah, same. And, what I find is that usually big volume is obviously comes with the higher moves up, but then you see a little bit of a trail off. And that's what we're looking at the moment, that we're hoping that's going to happen with Telstra, that it does come back to that natural momentum. Now, I'll go to the chart to explain. I do agree with that $4.20, as you mentioned before, that gradient of rise. So we could be seeing a little bit of a trail off. We are seeing the volume here on the weekly. If you have a look, the volume is trailing off as it's reaching new highs. So it could blow off a little bit before having that next leg up. But I think that this is setting up nicely. And I think this is great for medium to long term. Great super stock.
Yeah. And I mean, just before we finish up on this one, bargain stock at these prices for medium to long term?
I would say you might find a little bit more of a bargain in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right.
That would be my take.
All right, fantastic. Now, time to move on. Shortly, we are going to get into a stock which is providing a setup that happens rarely, but is often so powerful at making major reversals. So stay tuned for that one. You're not going to want to miss it. But next up is another major ASX miner, S32. Now, I want to start things off with an announcement that has happened on this company. Again, today, big news coming out, and it's got to do with the CEO again, changing CEOs happening. Which it will transfer, as it says here, the company's announcing Mr. Daly is the new CEO coming on that will join S32 from Anglo American, where he's currently the technical director of operations, and he will be joining the company in 2026. But what I want to do is go to the chart, and again, it's another one of those, big change from the top end management, something that the market does pay attention to, particularly, having that confidence in who is driving the ship. Now, if we look at the share price of S32 from May 2022, it's pointing downwards. And so I want to start there, Pedro, and get your thoughts. Obviously, this change in structure may potentially be driven by the fact that performance in the share price has been, quite poor, if you will, let's say, in a downtrend. Now, I'm not specifically going out there and saying this is the CEO's fault or anything like that, but maybe new ideas, new direction. That's something that could give this company a breath fresh of life and be that initial catalyst to get it, in the upward direction. Because, I mean, this stock since 2016 has had really good performances. It's had huge runs when it's gone, and up until 2022 was trading at all-time highs. So although I wouldn't say it's disastrous what is happening right now, I think it's pulling back and it's still falling. What are you seeing with this one and the news coming out moving forward?
Yeah, it might be positive. I mean, seeing that he's coming from an American company, maybe the market will think that he's going to use his American connections to reestablish the market in America. But we've seen the tariffs on the aluminium market come in. But really, like you said, what's really interesting is what's happening on the chart. So if we can just go to the chart now, and I want to start off on the monthly. The momentum has come back to this long-term trend line, which is very interesting. See how, and I'm sure that you would have picked this up as well, how it just beautifully found support around there. Now, we know that commodity stocks are very cyclical. We've seen a low back in 2016, another low in 2020, and now we're seeing another low now in 2025. this could very well be the low. If it manages to hold above this trend line, then I'll be very bullish on the stock, and especially if it can get above $3. $3 seems to be a very important level for this stock.
Yeah, and I mean, in light of all the news that is coming out with this one, obviously, you know, we go back to that chart and have a look. Since September, there was so much news coming out, you know, in terms of the China stimulus, and that gave it a bit of a boost. And then obviously the aluminium situation with the tariffs came in, and that's sent it falling a little. I mean, I'm totally with you from the point of view that you're looking at this stock running up in that beautiful trend, touching it almost exactly. I mean, how many times do you see this? I know you deal with students, or our students, much more on a day-to-day basis, and you help teach these techniques. And before I get to going into that question a bit further, I just want to bring up Dale's book here, which is How to Beat the Managed Funds by 20%. This book will give you an introduction to pretty much a lot of the things we do here on this show. But if you do really want to get and take your trading seriously, this book is free. You just have to pay the shipping. But it is an introduction. So if you do want to take things to the next level and basically analyze the charts the way Pedro does, the way I do, the way we all do here, it's not as hard as you might think. It's actually quite simple. You just need a plan and an education in order to do it right. So please, if you're serious, go and visit the website, wealthwithin.com.au, or just give the office a ring on 03 9290 9999 because the team would love to speak to you. But anyway, going back to that chart, and that question I wanted to ask you, Pedro, I mean, you see this time and time again, these lines that we draw, yes, they do appear simple, but there is method to the madness. And I mean, you know, just speak a little bit to that and what you see from your experience dealing, as I said, with the students, that you can identify some of the best opportunities when trading stocks just by knowing these certain tools that we do have available, which one of these is that trend line. And right now, there's a very high degree of probability that we could get this reversal here. In light of everything else, in terms of the pullbacks, it's one of those tools that, yes, it looks simple, but geez, it's very powerful.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there's rules that we teach in the course around applying these trend lines. It's not as simple as just applying lines on the chart. We're dealing with momentum here, and that's really what these are. They're a momentum indicator. And I know that the book touches on those trend lines, and it does a great job at doing that. So then after reading that book, if you want to take it to the next level still, then I highly recommend that you do our course, and hopefully I get to be your assessor. But basically, we teach price analysis, and right now it's coming into a very interesting level. Like I said earlier, $3 has been a catalyst for this stock finding support and resistance multiple times. Now, you could identify this yourself, but as you look at more charts, you're going to get that eye for it. It's kind of like that tradesman that sees the photo a little bit crooked on the wall and he can spot that. Well, we can spot these trends, in a blink of an eye. So that $3, I'm sure that you would agree, is going to be the catalyst moving forward for this stock.
Yeah, and it's also to overlay, if we just go back to that chart, to overlay not just the horizontal lines and the levels where things could happen, it's reading the language of price. And right now, what I'm reading from this bar analysis is not overly bullish for me to confirm, because it's about confirming when this low was in. It's about confirming when this low was in. And when you're able to confirm lows rather than try to pick bottoms like here, or something through here, or even here, you stack that layer of probability that you're going to be in a successful trade, because just trying to pick bottoms, I mean, you can see how fraught it is with danger and how wrong you can get it. But there are things within this price action here and also here, which I'm not going to get into, that provide confirmation, as I said, that we teach, that will give you that safer signal to say, hey, you know what? Yes, we're going to run up, and we're going to run up. Right now, I'm not seeing that with S32. I love the fact that we've bounced off this momentum line, but I do want to see a little bit more in the way of price action, potentially making a higher base and starting to close a bit, a bit higher around those $3 levels with really nice structure to then confirm that we're going to bounce on up. So I would say this is one to watch at bargain prices, absolutely. Definitely one to put on your radar, but just not yet in terms of whether that buy trigger is in right now. Would you agree with that?
What would be your price projection, Phil, if this stock was to rise up?
Yeah, nice. You're asking the questions all the way from there, but let's let's go to the chart. That's a good question, mate. But what I would like to see is a higher base. That's for sure. That's the first thing. Or in layman's terms, to test the low. We've not seen that happen yet. And the nature of this kind of fall, sometimes these falls attest to flush outs that can happen in the market. You can often see that last leg form that flush out move, which is quite sharp. But what I'm waiting to see now is what the buyers do. And if the buyers aren't sharp on the way back, like we've seen on our index, like we saw during the COVID low, then that's a cause for concern for me. If we can't claw back at least, 3/4 or half of what we've seen this move down be relatively quickly, then I would argue this stock might peter around slowly and make its way up. Not to say that there might not be an opportunity. You might get stuck sideways or, a stock filtering around. Where the safe opportunities might be is once this stock can get through these momentum lines through here. So just like it did back in the previous occasion in 2021, rather than avoid all this slow moving nonsense, you get into the pricey, the juicy part of the trend where it really starts accelerating. And that's what I mean by we're not seeing that yet. So I think one to watch, but still the jury is out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
We'll just sit on our hands for now.
Fantastic. All right, time for PEXA Group, which released its quarterly Q3 performance update. Now, I want to bring up the PEXA update, which is basically that they announced their Q3 25 trading updates. Rather than go through this whole thing, what I found quite interesting was that in this quarter, they saw volume grow by 2% versus 9% growth in the comparative period of Q3 2024. And so a year prior, that growth has slowed down. It's mainly been attributed to a slowing macroeconomic environment. Now, Pedro, I want to get your thoughts here because obviously, whilst not a shocking report, it is a slowdown compared to last year. And on one hand, that can be taken as negative news. But when you line that up with the chart, and I'll get you to go and have a look at the chart first, we are seeing something technical right now that presents one of those opportunities that, hey, this could be a long-term winner, regardless of some of this short-term news. Because we saw it with Block Inc. the other week. News came out that it was a profit downgrade. The stock fell about 30% on the open. It's already clawed back 20% this week. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, this is a company that relies on homes being sold. They're essentially the facilitator to change titles between people. And if we start to see some rate cuts, then we're going to see more refinancing, more house sales, and that's going to bode well for this stock. That's the fundamental side of things. We've got this lagging indicator, which is a report, but now looking forward, and that's what we do on the chart. We can forecast where this stock could go at in future. So we're seeing price coming back to that $11 level, which it has tested multiple times in the past. We've seen that low in 2022 and multiple times around 2023 here, and more recently around that April 2025. Now, I've put $10 here because that's the all-time low. That is the lowest that sellers were willing to go, and that buyers started to pick up the stock. That is, at the moment, if I can just put the price percentage tool, that's around that 15% lower than it is now. We've got 6% to that $11, which, for this type of stock, it's not unlikely to see it, have that move in maybe a week or a couple of weeks. So we could be nearing that very important level very soon. And on the weekly chart here, I'll finish off by saying that we do have this down momentum that it's beautifully found resistance at recently. So we are going to maybe see this trend continue down, maybe up until it hits that $11 level before we start seeing some buyers come in. And then eventually, if we see that break above that downtrend line, then I'll be very excited because this has some huge upside potential, this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I would like to get on the charts also and have a look there for you. And I totally agree with all the things you're saying. One thing I will add, and I've just marked a few, let me zoom that out, a few dots. We're on the monthly chart here, obviously. And we know that when you look at a chart or a technical view of any stock, it moves in waves, waves up, waves down. That's just the way the markets move. And so I've nominated a few dots through here, which to me, another reason why this stock is doing something right now that could be basically life-changing, that it's not done in the past. And if we start back from 2021, we saw the market make a major low and had a nice little run up. In June 2022, made another significant low, shorter run up, but nevertheless, it was a significant low. Then we get to November 2023, another significant low, obviously the all-time low, we get a run up. We fast forward to today, and what we're seeing is the market make another major low, with it in the very early stages of it starting to reverse, shown by this green upward moving bar. Now, why is this important? Because if you look at this low compared to the previous three, it's the first time in history it's created a higher base on a similar time frame when you're talking out the distance in the lows. So that is different. It's never happened before. That is significant to me. The fact that we're bouncing at 11, making that higher base, that's another significant point that you've mentioned. And for the traders out there that know of these major bottoming patterns that do occur, again, stuff that we do teach, there are two very major patterns, and I'm not going to draw them, but that are happening right now in this stock that do happen at significant bottoms or tops. So to me right now, that is the opportunity. It's a technical opportunity for this stock, but it does need to get going. If we just go back to that chart real quick, it does need to hold these levels and start rising on from here, not take out this previous low in April, because if it does, that might negate all of the stuff we're just talking about, especially if it takes out that October 2023 low. So as long as it holds from here and starts to rise up, I think every day, month, week that passes, we get closer to confirming that significant technical point. And from there, we should see upside, running in the short term, at least to the 14, 15 bucks. Any final thoughts on this one, Pedro?
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight an important thing, that this stock first came on the market at $17. It's now trading around those, $11, $12 levels at the moment. So that is, if I can just put my price percentage, that's around 35% lower than when it came out. So this is another point why we say that it's very difficult to buy on an IPO when you haven't got a history of a stock. You want to wait until the stock has come onto the market and made particular patterns and price levels before you invest, because you could oftentimes, probably 90% of the time, you can buy them for a lot lower than what they came out at.
Yeah, especially if you're on top of the technical. So just quickly with this one, if I can ask before we finish off, bargain at these prices?
I'm going to say yes, bargain at these prices for this one.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Now, if you want more hot stock tips, check out our video, 3 ASX stocks making big waves right now.